So the president trying to steer clear of Democrats' calls to defund the police, trying to distance himself with as crime surges and some of the liberal policies come under fire. Listen to this.
The answer is not to abandon our streets. That's not the answer. The answer is not to defund the police. It's to give you the tools, the training, the funding to be partners, to be protectors. We're not about defunding. We're about funding.
Okay, so the president's attempt to pivot on crime, putting him at odds with the far left and his own vice president.
We have to reimagine public safety and how we do public safety in our country.
Not only do we need to defund, but we need to dismantle and start anew.
Talking about the reduction of our NYPD budget and defunding a $6 billion NYPD budget.
I am for defunding the police.
Yes, I support the defund movement because this is about the investment in our communities, which have historically been divested.
So that really didn't work out very well. We have increasing crime, homicide, rape. Car theft is up 92% in cities all over the country. So, Janine, what did you think about what the president said when he came to town and what he focused on?
Well, I didn't think much of what he said because this is a president who was quiet during 2020 when the streets were burning down and when they told us, that these were peaceful protests with buildings coming down, police precincts being emptied, federal courthouse being bombed and arson being committed there. They're literally they talk out of both sides of their mouth. But let's talk about the focus. He talked about guns and he talked about bringing the feds in. I'm going to bring the feds in and they're going to handle all these gun crimes. I said the other day, the feds across the nation have handled in 50 states a grand total of 12,000 gun crimes. But he said, we can now work together. We're thinking of ways to work together. What are you thinking about? We've been working together for years. The state, the feds, the local. I was a DA. We've put together task forces. We don't need you to come to New York and tell us this. But here's the problem. The problem is that they're all talk, whether it's Hochul, whether it's Adams, and I want to give Adams the benefit of the doubt, and whether it is the president. And I'll tell you why with Adams. Adams said yesterday, I don't control bail reform, but we need to give judges the dangerousness component and raise the age or part of it, and I don't control that because they're federal laws. Are you stupid? They're not federal laws. These are state laws that you can control, that you can change, that you can appeal. They're all full of it. They don't have a moral core.
And Richard, what is the argument against that? Those are two things. Bail reform, give judges the right to look at an individual, give them discretion, the right to look at what's going on and say, you know what, you do not deserve to be on the street. You have committed 7 crimes beforehand. Now you're back in front of me again. You're going away tonight and you're going to wait for your court date. Or to say that anyone under the age of 18 shouldn't be prosecuted. I mean, do you know how many 16, 15-year-olds are stealing cars all over New York, all over New Jersey, all over Long Island, Washington, D.C., all over the place? So are those rules that should be changed?
Well, listen, I think we've had this conversation on your show before, Martha, and I agree with you on that particular point, where I do agree with the mayor of New York
But why didn't the president say it? Why doesn't he back it?
And I think he does. I mean, he doesn't control the bail. He doesn't control the bail laws. I think what the mayor's trying to say in New York is it's on the state legislature to determine what the bail is. But I want to point to a place
he didn't say that. He said it's on the feds.
And that was a misstatement on his point, right? But I want to say let's talk about where it's working. So in the city of St. Louis, Mayor Tashara Jones, a city that had what was the deadliest city in the country, she did something that was actually pretty remarkable. She created a 3-pronged strategy: deterrence, intervention, and prevention. The first part is she created a program called Cops and Clinicians. And in that program, in the highest crime neighborhoods, they pair up cops with clinicians, social workers, psychiatrists, and they bring them into crime situations so that these clinicians can de-escalate. The second thing she did is she hired people who live in community to intervene in crimes, helping folks find jobs. When crimes happen, de-escalating those crimes. And the third thing she did was she pushed her police officers to solve unsolved murders. As a result of that, in St. Louis, the homicide rate is down 26%. Crime is down 10%. So if we do some of the policies that Democrats and all people with common sense have advocated for, there's not all calls that police officers should show up to. I've spent 24 hours with a cop, and there are cops that tell you, well, we don't want to show up to drug crimes because when people are having a drug overdose, we're not the best trained to deal with it, but a drug therapist is.
Should have sent a therapist to that apartment where those 2 cops were killed.
Exactly. Exactly. That's no. That was a domestic violence call. And what you're saying is send a socialist
But
there.
it's working in St. Louis.
But if the socialists
homicides
went,
are
she would have
down
been
26%.
gunned down.
Do you know how
like
high the
Ramos.
homicides were when this started?
And
They
it's
broke
down
a record.
26%.
Yeah,
That's
progress.
in her town. That's not
remember where
New
you're
York
starting.
City.
Remember
But
where
we're
you're
down,
starting.
but you have to acknowledge that they're down 26%.
Yeah.
Congratulations, they're going after cold cases.
How far were they up before they went
But it
down?
doesn't matter. It shows that the policies work.
What policies?
I just
prosecutor
listed
worth
them.
their salt goes after cold cases. Everybody
just
does
listed
that.
them.
Well, good for her.
Jesse.
I don't know. I'm going to have to look at the statistics in the commercial break. We'll see if that's accurate. But Biden's trying to win an argument that his party already lost. The defund the police argument's dead. They lost that. So he thinks he's winning. He's losing because he's on defense against the squad and he's on defense against Republicans. There's 2 questions that Joe Biden needs to answer, and the media has to press him on that. 1, if you are an ex-con and you commit a felony, should you be able to get out on no or low bail? Yes or no, Mr. President? The other question is, do you believe armed robbery should be a misdemeanor? Yes or no, Mr. President? And if he tries to wiggle, you hit him with a specific case and ask him if he's comfortable with that. The problem is the media doesn't ask about crime. They ask about Ukraine. Crime
You did
in
an entire
Ukraine.
news conference, not one person asked a question on crime.
Right. We want the answers to this question. And the longer Joe Biden is silent on those things, he gives air cover to DAs and local legislatures to keep putting bad people back on the streets.
Right.
Yeah, on this defunding thing, I will hold a grudge. I'm not going to forget the reprehensible movement because it directly affected me. Right. Unlike it affected politicians or the media, it still affects me. We had another smash and grab in my neighborhood yesterday. I think about how the media and the Democrats defending and helping looters and rioters under the guise of justice. I will not forget that. We need to hang defund the police around every Democrat's neck. And they're going to say, but wait, I wasn't pro defund the police, but you didn't have the guts to speak up. Biden didn't have the guts to speak up. He was hiding like a coward. And just by not saying anything, he enabled these wacky, destructive, deadly policies, and by not saying anything, they also helped the massive demonization of police that we saw happen, which contributed to the Ferguson effect, which caused the murder rate to go up. It's important that the Democrats feel the pain for creating this climate, and people should not forget. Last thing, the aloofness of the media and the politicians about crime speaks to the fact that they don't experience it. So what does the reporters do? Those heroic reporters, they show up and they report on the protests. They gin it up until there are riots and there's arson, and then they leave. They don't return to Minneapolis. They don't see if anything's been rebuilt. They're gone. They don't know anything. There's nobody smashing and grabbing in their neighborhoods, so what do they care? There's nobody being pushed in front of subways where they live, so they don't care. So they have to be held accountable. And as far as I will never forget 2019 and 2020, 2020, when all this stuff started.
Never forget.
Never forget.
Well, the policies and the numbers don't lie.
Yeah.
They don't lie.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.